Howdy, folks. Justin here. Welcome to From Loser to Legend, Episode 7, Deck Building, Part 2. I'm going to be talking about some of the things we didn't talk about last week, and we are going to be some of the first people to be talking about November's monthly card reveal. That just got posted, it just got leaked onto the internet, so very excited to be able to discuss that. As usual, the purpose of From Loser to Legend is help you up your game from that guy up there who has no game. I mean, look at that. He zero game, no game, no. He's getting zero copies of November's card as well. To the guy over here on the right-hand side of your screen who is receiving 10 foil copies, 10 premium copies of November's card. So, obviously, we want to be like the guy with the medal and the sunglasses. He's over here. And not the guy with the huge drug problem up top. So, let's clear out the title page here. Yeah, we want to remove that. Okay. So, I know the thing that everybody's really excited about is probably the new card, so we're going to discuss that first. I have that right here. There it is. Our reward card for the month of November. Getting these copies. You'll be getting your copies of this card December 1st if you place pretty well on the ladder. I believe you need to hit rank 8, rank 5, or rank 1 to receive 1, 2, or 3 copies of this card for free. We have Battle Reeve of Dusk. 3/3 for 6, so off the bat, I'm not super enthusiastic about those stats. It would need to do something insane. And the text says, summon friendly creatures get +1/+1 for each keyword they have. Okay, so first I got some questions, right? Anasi, for example, doesn't count Last Gasp as a keyword. Is Last Gasp a keyword? If it is, the more things that count as keywords, obviously, the better Battle Reeve of Dusk can be. My initial impression of the card is, my initial comment on the card is that I'm very happy to see this card after last month's Mechanical Ally, which, try as I might, I could not make. I even tried filming just to see if I could catch that damn Mechanical Ally triggering on camera. Couldn't do it. Battle Reeve of Dusk feels to me a lot like Smuggler's Cache, where it's a card that could very easily inspire a person to build a whole new deck, and is on the cusp of playability on its own. Excuse me, just one second. um, I don't think Battle Reeve of Dusk is going to change the meta up at all. I don't think it's going to do what Hissgrove did. But I think that it's not nearly as bad as it looks at first glance. We're going to move this fellow over here, this young woman, over here, and take a look at some cards that I think we should consider when we're trying to figure out whether or not this card is any good or not. So let's just start in blue. If Last Gasp, like I said, counts as a keyword, then this card is considerably more interesting. If Prophecy counts as a keyword, then it's considerably more interesting. But just on this page, we have Even More Steward. Giving a +2/+2 buff to an Even More Steward could be super swingy. Obviously, the poster child for stacks of keywords is Fighters Guild Recruit. If we can drop this guy down and turn this into a monster, I think we would be doing some pretty good things. Black Sap Protector looks like it works nicely with this. Giant Bat definitely works well, turning this into a 4/4. As well as getting, one way to look at this card is that it can get some extra mileage out of charge, the turn after they charge onto the battlefield. If Last Gasp counts, once again, Brannis Courier, fantastic. Moonlight Werebat, fantastic with this card. Probably never going to combo that with Territorial Viper, although it does have 2 keywords. And I can even see an argument to be made that you might want to combo this with the Necrom Mastermind if you're looking for cards with keywords. If Pilfer counts, Quinral Burglar has got a couple keywords to it. Tazcad really doesn't need any help, but So is the card good? I don't think it's great. I think I'm excited to see it played. I think it could be reasonable in arena. Um, but generally, I kind of like. I think this is my favorite kind of card. Uh, if we can't get a Hist Grove every month because that would too rapidly change up the meta, then I think that a card like Battle Reeve Dusk, which reminds me, like I said, a lot of um, Smuggler's Cache, is wonderful. Because I'm feeling inspired to fool around with this card, and the fact that they're giving these cards away to us for free, I think I think there's a good incentive on Direwolf and Bethesda's part, or whoever is making these decisions, to give us cards that we want to build with, to keep us playing, to engage us, and make increase player retention basically. And I think Battle Reeve of Dusk is the kind of card that can do that. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited about it. I'm glad to see that this is what we're getting. Um, you know, that's about all I have to say about it. I look forward to facing against it on the ladder, which is more than I can say for the Hisgrove decks right. I'm sorry, not the Hisgrove decks, the Smuggler's Cash decks right now, because the RNG element in that is just too much for me to handle most of the time. But I do enjoy what Battle Reeve Dusk represents. So that is my thought on that. Let's go ahead and clear that off then. Okay. So today we're going to talk about uh, the second step in the evolution of a meta. The meta being the decks you're likely to run into on the ladder. To recap real quick, last week we talked about how the first iteration of a meta game for a guard game like this is usually full of decks that are built around specific cards or a couple different cards that all synergize well with each other to create a fairly linear deck full of strong, subtle interactions amongst the cards in it, or not so subtle in the case of cards like, we talked about Drez Tormentor as a card that pretty loudly screams what sort of cards you should play with it. By the way, clocking in at exactly 10,000 soul shards, pretty cool. And I've already crafted quite a bit of stuff. You may have noticed this small suggestion, perhaps. I didn't. I stopped soul trapping cards about a month ago when I started to, when it started to become clear there was going to be another round of balance changes, and I was paid off. I was rewarded for this by soul trapping all my cards then after the patch hit, and we got full refund value for some of that stuff. Even cards that you might be excited to soul trap, like for instance, I had a. I know I'm going off topic here, but this is I think this is important. I had a golden Dunmer Nightblade, which you wouldn't think matters much. You might think, oh, that's a free, rare of my choice if I disenchant that. But if you soul trap it, but if you wait until you get full refund value for it, these premium cards give you insane amounts of value when you soul trap them. So maybe a good idea, unless you. And I'm not saying don't soul trap stuff if you want to go ahead and craft something right away, but just tonight worth pointing out that you should hold on to those things. Anyway, the Shrieking Harpy, Dress Tormentor, back on that thing. So that's how things start off. Um, and then comes the second step, which is what we're going to talk about today, which is creating decks designed to attack the existing decks, or to exist outside of their sphere of influence, right? Like a deck that cannot be handled easily by the current decks, or a deck that handles the current decks easily, is the second stage of the metagame's evolution. Just attacking the meta in general. Obviously, if this is the sort of approach you're taking to building your deck at any given time, you got to ask yourself what's popular. Like, what am I likely to run into on the ladder? Um, you know, right now, because the patch just hit, things are in a little bit of flux. But I think it's safe to say that you're going to see a lot of Battle Mage, both aggro and control versions. You're going to see a lot of Assassin, both more prophecy and more action versions, but there's a ton of overlap in those decks. You're still going to see a little bit of control mage, although not much. You're going to see a fair amount of mid-range and ramp scout, and lately I've been noticing an uptick in the amount of control spell sword. So ask yourselves, the first thing you got to do is when you're looking at the most popular decks, and for the sake of argument, we're going to say that the most popular deck is Scout. which is pretty popular. You need to ask yourself, like, how do I, uh, what creatures? I mean, there's two fundamental questions that you should ask. The first is, what is their deck most vulnerable to? And that can be, a question that's answered by a general strategy, right? Like the old Control Mage deck, for instance, is vulnerable to direct damage to the face and charge creatures, right? So your answer would be sort of general, sort of specific. You know, those cards are found in a couple colors. Uh, the second question then you need to ask is, what removal suite that I can run counteracts their strategy the best? Okay. Uh, to illustrate this principle, I'm going to talk a little bit about uh, the Archer deck, which is not what I mentioned, but is always popular, has been popular since the game launched, um, and how you might theoretically, in an Archer infested meta, build a counteractive deck, a reactive deck to it. So you need to consider the things that Archer does, right? Archer relies on small pings of damage and wound effects combined with finish off and leaf lurker effects to as removal, as well as a few creatures with lethal, and then also packs a suite of cards that generate massive advantage for them if they are ahead in life. Like that is their general strategy. Um, so what do you do if your meta is full of Archer? Well, if you're building a deck to counteract an Archer infested meta, you start by examining what creatures are least impacted by their form of removal. Right. Immediately, just coming to mind are things like Deathless Draugr, where it dies, you get another one. Creatures with Ward, um, you can't ping it, you can still wound it. And Iliac Sorcerer is actually a terrible example of this because Iliac Sorcerer is very weak to a very commonly run card, Murkwater Witch in Archer. But uh, you know, Windkeep Spellsword, solid against them. Or Daggerfall Mage might even net you some card advantage without inadvertently because they're Skaven Pyromancering or archering, sharpshooter scouting things down. Um, and cards that generate multiple bodies in each lane. There's only a few of these, but um, and Slaughterfish Spawning is worth taking in consideration. Not particularly good against Archer because Murkwater Witch again can handle both halves of this card fairly effectively. But there's Golden Saint, which generates a body in each lane if it triggers. Um, the removal is basically all one for one. Is what I'm getting at here. I kept my golden saint, by the way. The removal is basically one or even two for one if they're using finish off, and they need to generate card advantage through Triumphant Jarl or tempo advantage through charge creatures and prophecy creatures and Soul Rest Marshal. So if you can trigger Golden Saint, you should be pretty good. And this sort of brings us to the other weakness of that deck, which is that if they don't snowball out of control in the early game, they're going to have to win on the back of their life gain, their higher life total matters cards. So you look at cards that gain you life as a viable way to fight against this sort of strategy. Snake Tooth Necklace, fantastic card against Archer. Um, you know, if you're desperate, Giant Bat, but more realistically, House Kinsman, right? Cards that can keep your opponent from getting ahead of you in life. Moonlight Werebat. By the way, on the subject of these nerfs, House Kinsman, Moonlight Werebat, still great cards. Still totally playable. I wouldn't take them out of anything I was already running them in. It's important when you're building these sorts of decks that you don't go overboard. Like you might start running all these life gain effects and Golden Saints because you're running, you're trying to combat Archer, and so you think to yourself, well shit, Green Touched Spriggan, I'm gaining all this life. Like this could get huge. This would be insane. This is not the direction, however you want to go. It's important that you not go overboard with your answers and create a deck that cannot beat other decks, because it's not like the meta is ever 100% one thing at any given time. We're just hypothesizing a scenario where Archer is overwhelmingly dominant, and you want to build a deck to counter it. But there are a lot of ways you could look at this. Oh, looks like I accidentally backed out of that screen. Um, you could ask yourself, when Control Mage was all over the place, right? I built a Battlefax Life deck. Not a great deck. Um, but we'll do this as one more example of a way to attack each of parts of a deck's weakness, right? So we have charge creatures, right? We have creatures that generate functional card advantage, although debatably so in Crown Quartermaster. We have a host of very efficient one drops. Um, again, Dumber Nightblade, a card that creates a card just like Crown Quartermaster that really pays off using these charge creatures. More charge creatures, more things to ramp up our charge creatures. Creatures that can't be removed by mage's removal spells, right? I mean, like, this is immune to everything except cunning, crushing. I'm sorry, piercing javelin. So this is just another way to attack these sorts of things. Sentinel battle mace. These sorts of equipment that combo well with your charge creatures, and then you have to attack their other line of defense, which is their guard creatures. So you run cards like Cast Out, like Earthbone Spinner, and like Burn and Pillage, which allow you to attack their defenses, which is a perfectly viable way of going about it if you're trying to counteract a controlling strategy. So anyway, I wanted to. This isn't. We don't have a whole lot to say about how this sort of deck building works because I wanted to get more in depth about what the meta actually looked like. But right now it's pretty tumultuous, so we're not going to be able to examine everything in as detailed a manner as I would have liked. But I have a couple announcements to make real quick. I know I've fallen about a week behind on responding to comments on my videos. It's a combination of things. Both the channel is growing very quickly, and the number of comments I'm receiving is growing at a rate that is making it less and less practical for me to respond to every comment. So I'm going to make a point of responding more diligently to comments left after today's video, but it's going to be it's not going to be it's just not feasible anymore for me to respond to every comment on every video, given both what goes on in my life and how many views and comments we've been getting. Although I do read them all, and I really appreciate it, and I know I have a backlog of them, but that's just sort of the nature of what's been happening to the channel as it grows, which I think is a good thing. I mean, I want to thank you all. Okay, so funny story. When I first put something on YouTube and I set up a channel and I was in the Discord talking about it, I said, I got like 2 subscribers, I think maybe 3 subscribers, and then for some reason we had to change the channel to some other name. I can't even recall why. It had something to do with not being able to edit it correctly. You'll have to. I mean, this is something my girlfriend understands. I'm very illiterate when it comes to computers. And I was so crestfallen because I was like, man, those 3 people are never coming back, and what if they didn't have access to any other content for Elder Scrolls Legends, and because I was doing this then and now because I love this game, and I just there's a dearth of content out there for people, and I wanted to provide that, do what I can, but so now to have almost 1,900 subscribers is baffling, mind blowing. I have 3 more Loser to Legends videos planned. What we do after that, I have a plan for another series of videos, but I have 3 more topics for Loser to Legend. The only reason this last topic, deck building, was split into 2 is because, like I said, I was hoping to comment on the metagame and I didn't get around to it. Yeah, I think that's basically it. I just want to thank everybody again for joining me for these videos. We will be back next Sunday, of course, for another Loser to Legend episode. Next week, I'm going to try to release 3 gameplay videos. So we're going to be doing about 4 videos a week, but we're going to be doing the multiple games per video format that we did last week, which I think worked out pretty nicely both for my schedule and for I think people seem to enjoy it. So that's it. That's a wrap. Hopefully you enjoyed the look of the new card, and even if the rest of this stuff was bogus and you didn't enjoy it at all, I will see you all on the ladder. Have a great evening. Happy Sunday. Good night.